Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome to tonight's show. As you can see, we've got a change in scenery tonight. We are live from the DraftKings Sportsbook over at Foxwoods in Ledyard, Connecticut. A very special occasion of this week's version of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in, taking some time from your busy pre-summer night to talk some indoor football with me. For those of you who are new to this channel or new to the Indoor Football League in general, I want to warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game. That is a passion that I've channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for a sports forum site called Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site which specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams. Each week, our staff will bring you up-to-date schedules, team rosters, game previews, game recaps, whole variety of other analysis out there as well, along with breaking news as it happens. So if you are a fan of the Indoor Football League and want to enhance your fandom, Sports Coast to Coast is a go-to destination to get your fill. I have linked the site below in the description. Sorry about the mental lapse there. Where there you will also find the written version of this week's preview piece over at the forum as well. And I uploaded that yesterday. So without further ado, we're going to pivot over to our slideshow here. Only working off one screen today, so appreciate you bearing with me here. So there we have it. So we're already in week 9. By week count, we are already 40% of the way through the season, if you can believe it. So as the summer approaches and as the temperatures get hotter, so too will the play on the 50-yard turf. Very excited to see how this middle stretch of the season plays out. So we are going to be going over quite a bit today. We've got a decent amount of ground to cover here. We will start things off by recapping week 8. We had 6 games on the schedule, a couple of non-conference matchups in there as well. 2 matchups between top 2 teams in their respective conferences. So we will get a chance to talk about each one of those, how they went down in the detail that each of those games deserves. We're going to add those results to our season-long records so far, figure out what's hot, what's not, and what we might be able to rely on moving forward. So we'll talk about team trends, league trends, go over our results so far with money line, spread, and point total wagers, and talk about the last 2 perfect streaks remaining in the league. And I'm interested to hear from the crowd, and feel free to comment below. What do you think will happen first? A Northern Arizona outright win or an Orlando Pirates game to go under? We have yet to have either scenario happen this season. Will it be this week? We'll find out soon. So once we reflect and recap and get that portion of tonight fully concluded, we'll dive into week 9. We've got 5 games on the docket spread out over 3 days. So fortunately for us fans, we won't have any overlap to worry about this week. 4 teams are on bye. But for the 10 teams that are in action, we're going to preview each of those matchups, put in our picks, and then try to put together a 3-leg parlay attempt. And as a reminder, we have not had a winner on that front since week 6 of last season. So if that doesn't scream overdue, tell me what does. All right, let's talk week 8. We got things underway with a 5 o'clock Eastern kick. This game between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Fishers Freight. These 2 teams entered this game tied for the top spot in the Eastern Conference at 5-1. And at first, it looked like Fishers was going to have the head and shoulders advantage in this contest. They spent much of the first half dominating, built up a 14-point lead. And then late in the second quarter, Green Bay got a defensive stand. They forced a field goal attempt that missed. And from there, Green Bay really put their stamp on this game. They ended up going on a 20-0 run to take the lead by the time the fourth quarter came rolling around. While they were ahead late, another forced fumble by the Blizzard defense. Takeaway translates into another touchdown, and that is how Green Bay paved their way to victory. They take their second game over the Fishers Freight in the 3-game series this season. Final score in that one, 57-52. So Green Bay with the game advantage and also the tiebreaker if it comes down to that at the end of the season. Our second game of the week featured the Quad City Steamwheelers looking for a win against the Iowa Barnstormers, who had lost their first 5 games of this season and 17 overall dating back to last season. This is another one where the team that got out in front looked like they were pretty much in control throughout the game. The Steamwheelers playing well enough on both sides of the ball. They took a 23-13 halftime lead, added to that right away with the deuce by Jan Bogdan. Unfortunately for Quad City, though, that was the last sprinkling of scoring that they would get for the rest of the game, as the Barnstormer defense, which has had its well-documented struggles in the past year plus, they locked down and played shutout ball from that point onward. That allowed the new look offense under Dante Avila Santos to pretty much pick up the rest of the slack. Didn't set the world on fire, but they got the points that they needed to. They ended the game on a 22-0 run. And for the fans in Day 1, we're celebrating with you. First win in 391 days for the Barnstormers. They get it done. They deal an upset to Quad City as 2 touchdown favorites. Final score 35-25. Iowa to 1-5, and Quad City, surprisingly, down to a 2-5 record. We continued Saturday with the New Mexico Chupacabras going to Jacksonville, cross-country trip to take on the Jacksonville Sharks, looking to keep their strong winning ways going. Chupacabras looking to wrap up their road trip on a high note prior to their bye week this week. And as is the theme so far with these opening games so far, the team that got out in front had a little bit of difficulty sustaining it. And believe it or not, even as 18.5-point underdogs, it was the Chupacabras who lit a little bit of a fire underneath Jacksonville here. The defense came to life in the second quarter, 3 consecutive turnovers on downs. That sequence helped the Chupacabras get ahead to a 20-13 halftime lead. Unfortunately for New Mexico, they kind of ran out of gas, while Jacksonville also kind of got their footing underneath them. They went up on going on a pretty significant scoring run in that second half. The Chupacabras did everything they could to come back, but unfortunately for them, it is another game where they fall short. They lose for a 3rd straight time. Jacksonville picks up their 3rd straight win. Final score on that one, Jacksonville 43, New Mexico 32, as both teams continue their opposite trajectories in varying situations in their respective conferences. But for Jacksonville, they keep moving along, even though they didn't necessarily cover that lopsided 18.5 spread. Next game on the docket here, we had the San Diego Strike Force at Tulsa taking on the Oilers. Another non-conference tilt, 3rd all-time meeting between these two teams. Very weird game, I will say, because the offenses were very, very efficient in putting up points on the board. But we didn't really have that many possessions to start off this game. Sure, we had some quick hits, but everything else seemed like it was a 5, 6, even 7 or 8 minute drive. At the end of the first half, Tulsa was ahead 21-14, and they pretty much alternated between 14-point and 7-point advantages. In the fourth quarter, they surprised the Strike Force with an onside kick recovery. Bailey Hale both kicking and recovering that attempt, stealing an all-important possession for the Oilers, which they then translated into another touchdown as part of TJ Edwards' outstanding day. The Strike Force falling short in this one on the road as Tulsa gets a big win. They snap a 3-game skid, 51-42 the final score from the Box Center, as the Strike Force tumbled to a 4-2 record with this result as well. Our final game of Saturday night saw the San Antonio Gunslingers traveling to Tucson, taking on the Sugar Skulls, as both teams were seeking out a very, very important win in terms of the Western Conference playoff picture. Unfortunately, for those who were wanting to catch the game on overnight, didn't really see anything until the very end of the first half. What we do know about that game, though, is that the Gunslingers led 21-17 at the half, and it was San Antonio that slammed the door completely shut on the hosts the rest of the way through. The Sugar Skulls employing Taz Wilson as their new starting quarterback after their release of Casey Otto leading up to last week's game. There was a little bit of success to be had in the first half, but nothing there in the second half for them. The Gunslingers continue to be, at least numerically, one of the best defenses in the game. The offense, again, having their moments of brightness and also their moments of dullness as well, but they end up getting a huge boost from their defense in this game. They end up taking this one 35-17, which sends San Antonio to a 2-3 record and the provisional 4th spot in the Western Conference. Meanwhile, Tucson drops to 2-4 at a half a game back of San Antonio for that spot. And we saved the best game of the week for last. Sunday night indoor football between the Arizona Rattlers and the Vegas Nighthawks. These two teams basically went down each other's throats, both on the field and off the field. If you have any sort of context as to what happened in that game, it was a doozy, and it got quite its fair share of coverage on social media in the days after. But in terms of on-field play, though, this one was actually fairly even through the first 29 minutes or so. What really set this game apart was the Nighthawks getting a last-second touchdown to end the first half. Jaden DeLaura throwing a touchdown to a wide-open Deshaun Stoudemire. And as it turned out, the Nighthawks also got the second half kickoff, and they turned that into a touchdown as well. So at that point, it was pretty much straddling again between that 14-point lead and that 7-point lead. In a crazy, wild fourth quarter, we had a double doink on the part of the Nighthawks that failed to increase the lead from 7 to 10 points for Vegas. But Arizona, on that last drive that they had, they couldn't get it done. They went turnover on downs. That fourth quarter play featuring a lot of contact in the secondary that did not draw any penalties. Another very much talked about point in a game that had many. But Vegas getting a touchdown inside a minute left. Arizona tried for a touchdown to get through the back door. Last second interception in the end zone thwarted that, though. And it is Vegas winning a 5th consecutive game, taking the lone spot in the Western Conference at number 1, 56-42, the final in that game. So the positive here, we cashed under bets for the first time all season. The bad news, we wound up short on just about everything else, including all 3 of our spread bets and our money line pick of San Diego falling short as well. So we got a lot of reversals of trends that we have had before. So what was previously winless now has a pair of wins. What was previously undefeated now has a pair of losses. So we're starting to see things here level out a little bit. But again, our main goal, we talked about this last week as well, trying to drastically improve that over-under record while maintaining that plus 50% mark on just about everything else. Our overall record heading into this week is 19-22. We have had a pretty rough stretch of luck in close one-possession games, as 13 of our 22 losses have been defined by either a less than 8-point margin or basically that one play that would have bridged that for us. To put that in perspective, if you even turn 5 of those into wins, we're 24-17 right now and have a completely different outlook. So all we can do is trust our process and see if we can get a few more bounces to go our way as part of a regression to the mean mindset. So we've got our hole to climb out of, but we've been in far worse before. So I'm confident in our ability to improve those numbers. So our parlay of the week did not even get off the ground. Fishers with that 14-point lead, they couldn't close it out against Green Bay as the Blizzard just went on an onslaught of offense. Quad City, oh no, Quad City. Couldn't even win, let alone cover that spread at 2 touchdowns. If you want to call it, fortunately for us, Arizona and Vegas' shootout prevented the whole thing from being a reverse sweep. So the fact that that is also our first over-under parlay leg to cash this season, you know what? It gets us a little momentum. And we got to look for those small moral victories here, which hopefully those propel our way to an eventual winner. Eventually, we're going to get 3 selections right within the same week. I just know we will. And I feel it's going to be sooner rather than later. Here's our visual chart heading into this week. It was a second consecutive losing week for us, unfortunately. So we're on that little bit of a slide that saw us go in a 2-week span from basically 1 unit of gain to near 5 units of net loss on that weighted method. The flat method kind of creeping closer as well with a couple straight mortal Mega Max losses. But that's going to be a very fascinating thing to see how that play of a day confidence kind of affects things moving forward. All righty, here is the 41 game population so far in terms of every bet type and both sides of those bet types. Again, the big theme here, if you're just going to take a random bet, you are best suited taking the home team on the spread. It has converted 2/3 of the time so far this season, as has home teams winning outright. So if you're looking for an overall guide on how to select these games, tough to do much better than that significant trend right there. Overall, the spread, favorites and underdogs, pretty much dead even. Same deal with overs and unders. But like we said last week, we may have found a little bit of a divide in terms of maybe what that number is set at, comparing the over-under records for games depending on their implied totals. So 86.5 or less has been very favorable to over-bettors. 87.5 or more favorable to those playing the low end of the total. Again, these are all going to depend on particular matchups, how each team's offenses are playing, how each team's defenses are playing. But again, it just goes to that premise of if you choose one of those 41 games at random, if it has an over-under of 86.5 or less, odds are you got the over on it. So very interesting trends here. We'll have to see exactly how these play out with our picks both this week as well as future weeks. Here's a look at our team-by-team trends so far. We're starting to see some significant lopsided results here panning out. Notably, Northern Arizona's struggles to cover the spread. They're obviously outright winless so far this season as well. San Antonio, a very big team to the under this year, cashing 4 or 5 times in that bet type, while their average game is settled in at just 64 points a game. So very, very low compared to the league average, which right now is about 85 points a game. So you're talking about 3 touchdowns per game less in San Antonio Gunslingers ball games so far. Vegas has covered in 5 straight games and 11 of 12 overall. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to ride that momentous streak into this slate of games as the Nighthawks are on a bye. So if we want to ride it, we're going to have to wait till next week when they play in the IFL Cup. Quad City games 2 and 5 to the under as well, while the Oilers have been an impressive 4-1 against the spread despite their sub 500 outright record so far this year. So there's a lot of fun stuff to look at here. And I'm led to believe that it's somewhat insightful as well. So if you're getting some benefit from it, I feel pretty good about it. All right, and here are our yearly results so far. At this point in the season, we really have to look into the teams where we only have 1 win. That's the Chupacabras, the Fishers Freight, and the Jacksonville Sharks. Unfortunately for New Mexico, we won't be able to improve upon that record this week. but we will have every opportunity to capitalize on Fishers and Jacksonville. So we can put a little bit more thought into those games, see if there's a trend somewhere in there that we can capitalize on, or maybe some source of value that we hope could play out. But again, those are kind of the things that we're looking for here. Where are we struggling? Where do we need to lock in? These results pretty much tell us those answers. So we'll see what we can do there. All right, time for our weekly disclaimers here. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. This is a series that's purely rooted in fun and entertainment. It's not meant to be construed as a money-making tool or betting advice per se. This is just a mathematically inclined guy offering his insight on the game and making some picks based on perceived value. No more, no less. As we've seen so many times in sports, there's no such thing as a guaranteed lock. So if you are going to play, please make sure you do so responsibly and legally. You must be 21 years or older to play in most jurisdictions. If you do want to tail or fade my bets, please practice safe gaming habits. That includes setting a budget in terms of both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is having an issue with problem gaming, there's lots of resources either online or state sanctioned that provide assistance with that. Responsibleplay.org is one example. Haveagameplan.org is another. And like I said before, each state has their own resources as well to give help for those who feel like they might need it the most. So if that's something that you feel like you're struggling with, know that you're not alone and that help is out there. All right, we are here at the actual sports book. We've got the big board pretty much right behind us. I say we go conquer it, folks. Bear with me here. And in a moment, I will have the lines up for you. Where are you? All right, brilliant. There we go. So we will begin things tonight with the Friday night game that is tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern. The Quad City Steamwheelers head to Green Bay to take on the Blizzard. Big game for both teams in fairly different ways. But Quad City heads in as 10.5-point underdogs to Green Bay. The over-under is 89.5. On the money line, Quad City plus 270, Green Bay minus 340. In the case of the Steamwheelers, they probably enter this game at a rather low point in confidence. After all, they just lost to the previously winless Iowa Barnstormers. They are now a very surprising 2-5 on the season. And it just seems like from that standpoint, this team has not really achieved a level that a lot of people were expecting. That seems like the strangest thing to say for a team that went to last year's Eastern Conference Final. They ended up hosting it, as a matter of fact, and were maybe a couple plays short of representing the East in the IFL National Championship game. You know, they retained Daquan Neal, Jared Ware Jr., Kevin Rudd. They bring in the Triple Crown winner, Keon Williams. And unfortunately for Quad City, it just hasn't materialized to that ceiling that they were expecting. Looking at the stats this week, offensively, Quad City is 9th in points per game, just under 42 per clip. Defensively, they are 7th in the IFL. I believe the number that I had there was 42.2 points per game. So all in all, they've been a largely net zero team that I feel like is a lot better than their 2-5 record would suggest. But at the end of the day, you've got to pull through with plays that matter. And right now, it just seems like Quad City has either come up short in that department or, you know, whoever the opponent is has taken that charge and ridden with it. So this is a massive game for Quad City against their arch rival. You have to argue that they probably do have to win this in order to feel good about their playoff chances going forward. In the case of Green Bay, they're riding super hot right now. It should be noted, though, that their lone hiccup in their 6-1 record was this matchup in Moline, where the Steamwheelers won by 15 points. So if you're a believer in repeat history, at least that provides you with a beacon of hope if you're a Steamwheeler fan. Maybe a little bit of tentativeness if you're a fan of the Green Bay Blizzard. But honestly, for them, Liam Thompson has been absolutely more than what the Blizzard could have hoped for leading into the season. He's already won 3 Offensive Player of the Week honors. It could be 4 when the league announces the next batch of Players of the Week at some future point. But the guy has just consistently made plays with pretty much anybody around him, whether it's Demylon Brown, Drayshawn Hudson, Trayvon Alexander. Anybody playing the Blizzard has pretty much likened it to one of those whack-a-moles where it's like, hey, it might be Terrell Carey. Hey, it might be Drayshawn Hudson. Hey, it might be Liam Thompson faking the throw and scrambling for a touchdown. So Green Bay's been a crazy efficient offense, more than 50 points per 10 possessions, more than 50 points per game. They are just rolling at an insane clip right now. Defensively, that front line with Tavon Grant, Henry Allen, they've just been really, really good as well. Although they have given up quite a few points in their past couple ball games. Both have been wins, to be sure. But they've also got hung for 68 against Orlando and 52 against the Fishers Freight. So they're going to look for a bounce back here against the Quad City team that has had instances on the road this season where they just have not been in that same form that they would be in scenarios where they're a home team. So looking through the selections for these contests, you guys know me. You guys know my bread and butter. Even at minus 10.5 is going to rest with the Green Bay Blizzard here. And you know what? Like we saw with Arizona and Vegas last week, this honestly could come down to, Green Bay could defer to the second half. They get a late touchdown to end the first half. Next thing you know, they're doubling down. But at this point, this is a team that's riding 2 different waves of emotions right now. And given where Quad City is on the road for this one, where they have struggled mightily, look no further than last week, this is a fair number for Green Bay to go out and get a dominant win. In their past 13 games at home, they have covered 10 of them, and the 3 of them that did not were decided on basically last-second offensive plays by the other team. So essentially getting backdoor covered all 3 times. Aside from that, this pick has been absolutely perfect. So we're looking for something here along the 53 to 39 threshold, somewhere around there. That is actually what my correct score prediction of this game is. If Green Bay starts out hot, rides out the momentum, continue to score points, I don't see any reason why we can't get a victory of 11 plus here. So let's start off the week with one of the most historically strongest bets in the entire indoor football league. Green Bay covers at the Rush. All right. Saturday's doubleheader features 2 games, beginning with an Eastern Conference clash between the Fishers Freight and the Orlando Pirates down at the Kia Center in Central Florida. In this game, the Pirates are the underdog, getting 8.5 from Fishers. The over-under is the highest mark of the season for a single game at 96 and a hook. On the money line, Fishers is minus 285, Orlando plus 230. For Fishers, I wrote about this in my written piece as well over on the forum. You know what Fishers is going to do, and unfortunately, there haven't been a whole lot of teams that have been able to stop it. Fishers plans to run that 3-headed monster of smash mouth running football right at you for a full 60 minutes. Josiah King having probably the best season for a running back in the league this season. Dominic Roberto, a perfect complement as that change of pace back. And Felix Harper with some explosive plays with his legs as well at the quarterback position. So you sprinkle that bruising running in with some pretty pristine passing from Felix Harper. You wind up with one of the highest ceiling offenses in the indoor football league. You pair that with the defense that right now is fourth in the IFL in defensive efficiency, and you've got a team with just about the highest floor of any team on a week-to-week basis in the IFL. For Orlando, their offense is absolutely fantastic. One of four teams averaging over 50 points a game. Paxton D. Laurent, very much in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. His supporting cast, Puka Williams, Thomas Owens, Naquan Murray, Tio Redding, equally as outstanding as well. Safe to say the offense is not the problem this season for Orlando. But like we've seen from their two losses prior to their bye last week, it's their defense that has left a lot of meat on the bone. They surrendered 68 to Jacksonville, 71 to Green Bay. That is simply not going to cut it in the IFL landscape. For those of you who have been following the transactions pages and team social media, Orlando has announced a lot of signings, particularly on that defense. Believe they got a person at linebacker, Javaris Davis, former Jacksonville Shark, cornerback, joining the team as well. So for Toby Johnson and I believe it's Steve Johnson, who's the defensive coordinator now for Orlando. They're retooling on the fly, and they're hoping that some proven names in that defensive backfield can help shift the tide for them a little bit. Because right now, it is the most generous defense in the IFL, giving up about 55 points on a per-game basis. So all that being said, what is my pick going to be here? This is another pick that is rooted pretty deep in some history here. And I look at Orlando as the home team. This is the 11th game in the IFL's betting era that they have been set as the underdog at home. In the previous 10 games, you look at their record, 7-3 outright, 8-2 against the spread. And they have just been an undeniable cash cow when the bookmakers go against them. So for that reason, I like Orlando here, and I really like this number as well. We're pretty much ensuring a full possession worth of wiggle room for the Pirates to, at the very least, keep this thing close. Like we said before, we know they have the offensive capability, as long as they are taking care of the ball, to keep up with any team in the league. The question for Orlando, whether they can actually weather the tide in this game, possibly outright win it, is going to be that defense's ability to come up with stops and takeaways. So we're going to have to see if the couple weeks off, acclimation with the new players into the new system, can be what the doctor ordered for the Orlando Pirates. But I can't ignore that number at plus 8.5. Also helps to note that Orlando swept the season series against the Freight last season. So maybe that makes Fishers a little bit hungry to get that another franchise first in this one, which they very well could. But at the end of the day, this is too many points here. Orlando's going to be well rested. Fishers is going to be traveling. So let's go home dog, which has been one of the most profitable bets in the IFL this season. All righty, Saturday's finale, the second leg of the doubleheader. San Antonio at Northern Arizona. The Wranglers go for their first win of the season. They are 7.5-point underdogs. The over-under is the lowest of the season at 75.5. On the money line, San Antonio minus 230 and Northern Arizona at plus 190. The offensive struggles of these teams, needless to say, very well documented. Although the Gunslingers seem to have found their answer, at least for the short and medium term, with Fred Payton Jr. with that dual threat ability at quarterback. Receiving core has been pretty solid as well. Austin Upshaw and Dion Cook among the highlights there. But really the story of San Antonio's season so far has been an outstanding defense. Sure, their past 2 games, they've played against Northern Arizona. They've played against a Tucson team trotting out a new quarterback. But you can only play the hand that's dealt to you at any given stretch in this league. And San Antonio has played it just about as well as you could have possibly asked them. I mean, come on. Giving up 31 points in 2 combined games of 50-yard indoor football. You just don't see that stretch of dominance very, very often. So the Gunslingers will look to lean on that once more against the Northern Arizona team that's actually playing San Antonio for a second consecutive time. They were on bye last week, trying to figure things out after an 0-5 start. So again, we're going to have to see what they go with at the quarterback position. Caleb Lowe got hurt a couple weeks ago. Was the bye week enough to get him healthy, or will the Wranglers have to trot out Ramon Atkins-Frazier again? Whatever that solution winds up being, this is going to be a stiff test. And if 2 weeks ago was any indication, points might be very, very difficult to come by for this home team. But who knows? With an extra week of practice, maybe they get things in sync and surprise some people. We're going to have to see how it goes. One positive that you could say about Northern Arizona, defensively, they made some strides. They're actually in the top half of the league in points allowed per game. They've had Traveris Farrell and Davia Gabor in particular make some pretty outstanding plays on that end as well. And right now we're starting to see that sum of individual parts really start to gel for the Wranglers. So they'll have another opportunity against, for all intents and purposes, a bottom 4 offense in San Antonio to kind of rewrite the narrative of their season a little bit. So what is my pick here? My pick here is not going to be on the spread here. I feel like this is probably the perfect spread for this game. That could be a trap either way. I do like San Antonio as the stronger of the 2 teams here, but I really don't like that 7.5 number going with the favorite here. So we're going to go with a little bit of chalk here, and I'm going to go with the Gunslingers outright for the victory. For those who have faded Northern Arizona all season, you've been profitable basically every week that they've taken the field. So we're going to hope that this week is no different for the purposes of this selection, as I expect the Gunslingers to come out and win a close shootout. Maybe we get another game from them where they offer a point total in the teens while doing enough offensively to get the job done. So expect this game to be very grimy, pretty much a tough watch, similar to what we had with the matchup a couple weeks ago at Freeman Coliseum. But yeah, I like San Antonio in this game. Not necessarily at the 7.5. I don't necessarily trust the plus 7.5 either. But the reality of the fact here is that if Northern Arizona scores even 28 points, that might be enough to cover this spread, in my opinion. So we're just going to eliminate that scenario altogether. We're going to go San Antonio outright for the win. All right. 3 out of 5 games in the Bucks here. Moving on to Sunday's games. A good one out east. We have the Tulsa Oilers and the Jacksonville Sharks. At home, the Sharks are favored, giving 4.5 to the Oilers. The over-under is 85.5. On the money line, Tulsa's plus 145 and Jacksonville is minus 175. I'll say this. These 2 teams are perfect foils to one another, at least in terms of what the metrics say. In the case of the Oilers, they've maybe been beset by some rough early season luck. They're 2-3 overall, but as we said during our season-long recap, they're 4-1 against the spread. Jacksonville, on the other hand, complete opposite. 4-1 outright, 2-3 against the spread. So might that tell us about a little bit of value on Tulsa at plus 145 money line? I'll leave that up to interpretation for you. But talking about the Oilers here a little bit, they've been a fascinating team. The offense has seen a resurgence with the arm of TJ Edwards, as he has made leaps and bounds on improvements compared to past seasons in that regard. And we're talking about the 2023 IFL MVP. So we're talking an improvement over a player that may have arguably the highest ceiling in the league. Scary thought for opposing defenses, I will say. But Tulsa has had, I believe, 3 games this season where they've eclipsed the 50-point mark, as Jeremiah Smith, Spencer Tiers, Jimmy Smith, recent signing at running back, with Billy back as offensive coordinator. They've just made life difficult on opposing defenses throughout the majority of the season. Defensively for the Oilers has been a little bit more of a mixed bag. They did release all IFL caliber player Ulrich Jones. They do have Trey Harvey still manning that defense from the linebacker / defensive back hybrid spot. But like we said, we've seen some mixed bags from them. They like the 64 points against Arizona, but they've also had games where they allow 22 to the Gunslingers. So it's really a catch-22. You could get either end of that spectrum from the Oilers defensively, but they're going to hope for one of those better games to try for that upset bid against the Sharks team that has won 3 in a row and looking to keep it going in the Shark Tank. The offense has been carried largely by quarterback James Cahoon, especially in the recent going, and he has made every one of his receivers in that room flourish at various points. We've seen Red Douglas have his moments. We've had Mark Quell-Wade have his moments. One of their newer signings, May, getting into the action as well. Jaden Stoshak, who's probably going to be returning to the lineup after being absent last week. Not to mention Jimmy Robinson as that dual threat as well in both the rushing game and the receiving game. So Jacksonville can burn you in just so many ways on offense. And defensively, they carry top 3 merit too. Defensive efficiency, defensive point scoring per game. That crop of players that they have on that side of the ball, led by Chris Rice, John Huggins, Chris Chikweneke, they've been outstanding so far this season. And each given week, regardless of opponent, it's going to be a stiff test either way. My pick in this game is actually based on a metric that I actually have this one of the largest differences on from game to game of the week. And it lies in the point total. I'm going to take the over here at 85.5, as I just love the offensive potential that both of these teams bring on a weekly basis. That's not to mention Marco Roscoe of the Jacksonville Sharks, who has historically been a very, very good kicker at home, very capable of knocking one or more deuces to help this total along as well. So the special teams will be something to keep an eye out for. Bailey Hale has had his moments as well in terms of coming up with some clutch kicks for the Oilers, including that game-tying 49-yard field goal in Orlando that sent that game to overtime. So expect both of these teams to be attack-oriented and aggressive, as 2 of the best teams in the IFL at establishing that offensive identity. And I will go as far as to say, this is my mortal Megamax of the week. My 2-unit play over 85.5, as we get an offensive scoring frenzy in Jacksonville. My score prediction for this one, Jacksonville 53 and Tulsa 44. That's how I see this game playing out. to wrap up Sunday night indoor football, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Battle of Arizona. The Tucson Sugar Skulls heading to Glendale to take on the Rattlers, who are 14.5-point favorites against their same state adversaries. The over-under is 87 in the hook. On the money line, Tulsa's plus 400, which is the highest mark of underdogs this week. And for Arizona, meager minus 535 payout. The Sugar Skulls have, unfortunately, been beset by a bit of an offensive identity crisis in the past few weeks. They had Draylon Ellis get a little bit turnover prone. That opened the door to Casey Otto, who did lead the Sugar Skulls to a win in his IFL debut. But the offense really struggled. They only scored 33 points in that victory, as their defense actually largely carried the way there. Otto struggled badly in the following game at San Diego. He was then released, replaced by Taz Wilson, who put up a grand total of 17 points in a home contest last week against the San Antonio Gunslingers. So if you're Tucson, you've got these really good supporting pieces around you with Tamorian Terry, Tavion Thomas, Javian Lofton. But who right now, between Taz Wilson and Draylon Ellis, do you believe unlocks the ceiling of that offense the best? Early season results would indicate Ellis, but are you willing to cope with maybe some of those rookie mistakes that come with that? Or do you rely on the veteran and his savvy know-how to keep the offense moving and plowing across the goal line on a consistent basis? So for head coach Rashawn Kaiser, that is the question that you're going to have to answer, while hoping that your defense kind of holds the fort in terms of their reasonably strong form so far. They're about league average in terms of defense, but we have seen a capability of them to pop off some defensive touchdowns along the way as well. So very opportunistic there. For the Arizona Rattlers, they are looking to bounce back following a loss, a scenario where historically they've been reasonably strong, save for a 4-game losing streak that they had last year. For those who have followed my picks know full well. If you're Arizona right now, this is just about catching up with Vegas, taking care of business, no nonsense. Although the one thing that we're going to have to see from Arizona specifically in this game is if there are any notable absences in terms of players or coaching staff that stemmed from the reported suspensions that the IFL handed out as a result of the fisticuffs thrown in the last game against the Nighthawks. They didn't really specify who or for how long. So it's really going to be up to us as fans and other stakeholders in the game to kind of help fill in those blanks. So that's something a little bit to monitor as well. What we do know for sure is that offensively for Arizona, we're going to see much of the same. Max Myler with that two-headed monster at running back with Ron Brown and Kimani Clark. The receiving core led by Keenan Hambrick and Corey Reed. And the defense has an opportunity here to come up with a sort of a bounce-back game themselves. They've given up 56 to Vegas, along with 63 to Tulsa in their past 2 games, so nearly 60 points a game over the past 2. So they'll be looking to correct that against a team that's trying to figure out some personnel stuff themselves. So those are a couple of the storylines there. My pick for this game, and we're going to keep things fairly balanced here. I'm going to go with the under at 87.5. We're going to lean into a little bit of that league-wide trend for this pick, where games set at 87.5 or more have converted 60% of the time to the under so far. So 12 wins, 8 losses for anybody doing that bet type in this game scenario. I just feel that within this context, this is too high of a number to put on a game involving a team trying to figure out that quarterback spot on the fly. I have the Rattlers winning this right around that 14-point margin of victory. I see a 47-33 type of ball game panning out So, I mean, the end game of this one is Tucson going to score enough points to kind of pick up this slack? And barring some weird tempo swings, possible overtime like we saw in this building last year, it's hard to see that happening. Not impossible, but the results are what they have been the past couple weeks. So we're going to look to ride that. With this pick, give me Arizona and Tucson staying below that 87.5 mark. All right. So with that being said, we will wrap up tonight with our 3-leg parlay of the week. And as the initial slide highlighted, we are skipping this Green Bay Blizzard game and moving right on to Fishers in Orlando as the opening leg. Give me this total. Over 96.5. Normally, this is the side of me that shies away from betting the over at the highest number of the season. I can't do it here, though. The offenses just have too much upside. We have still yet to see if the Pirates' personnel and scheme changes on defensively work out as planned. But at the end of the day, we have 2 top 4, top 5 offenses in the league going up against each other. Orlando, one of the higher tempo teams in the IFL as well. And Orlando also perfect 5-0 to the over, as we stated before. So we're looking to ride streaks as part of our weekly process here. This one is no different. So I'm going to go with this game. I view it as a very solid shot for the 4th consecutive Pirates game to make the century mark. Both teams scoring 50, certainly possible as well. So that's how we're going to begin this game, or this parlay, by betting the over in that contest. San Antonio, Northern Arizona is next, and we are going the absolute flip-flop opposite here, the under at 75.5. When these two teams met last week, or not last week, 2 weeks ago, we saw a grand total of 46 points as San Antonio won that one 32-14. Neither offense has lit the world on fire. Both defenses have their reasonable strength especially on the San Antonio side, as we mentioned in the main game preview. I honestly thought that this number was going to flirt with the lowest implied total set in the 4-year betting history of this league. I honestly thought that it was going to be like 72 or 71.5, something like that. For you historians out there, the lowest implied total, 72.5. That was in a Week 4 game in 2023 between the Iowa Barnstormers and the Sioux Falls Storm. So there's this week's history lesson for you. I just see this game playing out where we see 2 bottom 3, bottom 4 offenses try to do just enough to win while leaning on their defenses. So we've got a little bit of a wild look to this week's parlay, but we haven't hit yet. What's the worst that we can do here? Over 96.5 Fishers, Orlando. Under 75.5 San Antonio, Northern Arizona. And to bookend this week's parlay, we're going to go with the home team on the spread, which has been basically 66% conversion rate, and we're going to take it returning to Jacksonville at home on the spread, going back to that well. We took Jacksonville on the spread at home as our main game bet last week against the Chupacabras. Maybe we shouldn't have it minus 18.5. Fast forward a week, we got an opportunity to back them again, this time at a much more manageable number at 4.5. And I think they do it here. At their very best offensively, Jacksonville can absolutely light up the scoreboard against anyone. They just have so many weapons that they can throw at you at so many times. They can surprise defenses in so many ways. And we've seen Tulsa's offensive floor, or Tulsa's defensive floor, pretty darn low. We also can't really say the same about Jacksonville's defense. I think that's what gets them the difference here. I think TJ Edwards still is capable of putting up a very solid game, but to accomplish that is going to require an elevation of the game with respect to just how vaunted this Jacksonville defense is. So, again, we're looking for a win of 5 points or more here. I think Jacksonville gets it. Like I said before, I have my model with the Sharks winning by 9 points on average for this game. So, look for the Sharks to defend home turf with a convincing win and a cover. And that is my 3-leg parlay. It's a trio of minus 110 selections. At plus 595, we're looking at a $69.57 payout on a $10 slip. So we will see if this is the one that rings true for week 9. Again, for those who want to follow along or maybe completely fade entirely and try for the reverse sweep, we have Fisher's Orlando over 96.5, trying to ride Orlando's 5-game over streak. Under 75.5 in San Antonio, Northern Arizona, leaning upon San Antonio's low-scoring affair so far and 4-1 under record in that game as well. And for the Jacksonville Sharks, to continue the league-wide trend of home teams covering with dominance, which is 27-14 so far this season, looking for a win of 5 points or greater against the Tulsa Oilers to kick off Sunday. That's slate of games. So again, that's plus 595 if you want to take it. And that is going to be how the slate shakes out for week 9 in the 2026 Indoor Football League season. So I want to thank you all again for tuning in. Hope you had some fun with me in a super fun environment. If you are going to be placing bets this week, I wish you the very best of luck. And as always, I will see you at the cashier. This is Alex Schubert signing out from the DraftKings Sportsbook. Hope everyone has an amazing weekend. Get geared up for action beginning tomorrow night.